Hi, and welcome to this week's chapter 1. This week we are going to read Red Letter Sleigh. One step. One. I held my finger up and jabbed it at the ceiling of the Sugar Creek Rehabilitation Center. Just one. Vince Caldwell sat on the edge of the rehab center's white medical bed, his scrawny, age-spotted legs sticking out at the bottom of the blue gown. The slippers, which had seen much better days, dangled from his toes and hung low from his heels. One, or how else will you get back home to the people who love you? I questioned him. An unfortunate event that had made him take a nasty fall left him with a letter opener of all things jabbed into his brain. Fine, he gave with a sigh. The two nursing home attendants stepped up to either side of Vince. Each one slipped their arm underneath his armpit and helped him to his feet. Once his feet landed on the old yellow 12-inch tile floor, the three of them stood there for a few seconds. "Do you have your footing, Mr. Caldwell?" the young man in the indigo scrub asked while the other awaited Vince's reply. They noticed his nod. "Okay, now we're just going to stay on either side of you. All we need from you today is a couple of steps, just like what you're doing in physical therapy." Vince looked at me, and from under his thick brows, he gave a hard stare to the space in front of him, the empty space just waiting for him to step into it. "I can't." He shook his head before leaning his body back as though he was about to sit down. "Stop right there." I put my hand up, indicating for him to stop and for the assistants not to listen to him. "You've been in here for 2 months now, and I'm not sure why you insist you aren't ready. You've been ready, and the doctor cleared you today for today. That's why I'm here now. Now," I pointed at his feet, "let's take those steps, just like you did in therapy yesterday." I tried to encourage him without getting a wee bit irritated. I've never seen Vince this way, timid and almost old. Not that he was a spring chicken. He wasn't. He lived in the residential area of Sugar Creek Gap Nursing Home in one of the independent condos next to my own parents. I'd gotten to know the retired FBI agent as his mail carrier. Over the years, we'd become pretty close and even thought of ourselves as sleuthing buddies on a couple of different crimes in and around Sugar Creek Gap. So when I'd gotten a call from Vivian Tillett, the director of the nursing home, telling me Vince was dead, I was upset. Vince was like an uncle to me, and I was sure treating him as such with my forceful tone. "I'm here to pick you up, and that means you've got to walk over to the bathroom, get your clothes on so I can take you home." I swung my finger and twisted my body, pointed to the bathroom. "Get!" "You sound like you should be my kin instead of my mail carrier." Vince shook his head. He had no issue taking the first step, and then the second, and the third, and he ended up doing just fine. The door from the hall swung open. Dr. Klonick rushed in, rubbing her hands together. She had her shoulder-length brown hair pulled back into a headscarf. Her 5'5", 4-inch frame was small, but her personality was massive. "Where's Vince?" She glanced around at the empty room. "I figured he'd be standing at the door waiting for me to sign off on those discharge papers after all this time." "I think he's a little leery. Something about falling again," one of the assistants told Dr. Kleinig, something I never would have thought would describe how Vince felt. "He is acting like he's unable to walk this morning." "I see." Her chin lifted, her eyes sliding toward me. "I think we can fix that." About that time, Vince opened the bathroom door with his pajama pants still on and his robe open and the tie dangling down and brushing the sides of his knees. He shuffled across the tile, slippers swishing. "Oh, doctor, I didn't see you there." There was a hint of surprise in his face, though he tried to cover it up with a stoic, hard jaw. "I hear you're not wanting to really pick up those feet and walk." Her brows lifted, eyes looking at his legs. "Seems to me you can't walk, which means I'll just have to send you home in a wheelchair. I'll have my assistant tell Vida that you need to go over to the assisted living parts of for a few weeks, and they'll need to keep an eye on you." Vince got to high-stepping, a sudden shift in his physical state. "Looks like the bathroom trip made me feel better. I don't need a wheelchair, and I certainly don't need to move out of my condo. He did an about face and headed back to the bathroom. He muttered, I'll be right back with my clothes on. We waited until the door was shut before we all smiled. I guess you got him on that one. I walked over to the room's built-in cabinet, opened the double doors, and took out Vince's duffel bag, which I'd thrown a few things into after they discharged him from the hospital to the rehabilitation center. A man of Vince's stature has a big ego that plays into things. No one wants to move into assisted living if they don't have to. The assistant stuck a piece of paper in front of Dr. Klonick, and she signed it. I have already talked to his children, and they will be traveling to see him this weekend. They said it's fine if he's released in your care. She handed me the piece of paperwork to sign. That's great, I scribbled my name. I'd been in constant contact with his family since the day he'd been taken to the hospital, and his daughter, Mandy, had been worried sick. I stayed at the hospital until Mandy had gotten to town, and of course I told her to take her time. Vince was critical, but luckily he'd been taken back into surgery where the trauma doctors had worked their magic. Vince came out in a much more appropriate clothing this time. All ready? I asked him. It's a good day as any, I guess, he said with a quiver in his voice. He sat down in the wheelchair for his export of his joint. All righty now, Vince, Dr. Klonick handed him some discharge papers. I'll see you back in my office for a follow-up visit next week. The assistant pushed Vince out the door and down the hallway. Dr. Klonick and I followed behind. The day and time are written right here on the page, she pointed at the paper jiggling in his hand from the bumpy ride. The date and time were highlighted in pink, and she gazed my way. Our eyes caught. Chalk it up to women's intuition. I knew she was letting me know to make sure that I got Vince's oh-so-busy calendar, which was currently wide open, at least enough for him to get to his appointment. Now I couldn't guarantee the ladies who lived in the facility wouldn't fall over one another to let him go, but without fail, one of them would be waiting patiently for him when we returned. By the sound of it, they all planned to make him some sort of casserole to come home to. It's not on bingo day, is it? Vince's question caught my ear. The assistant stopped at the big circular revolving door that was large enough to push his wheelchair around and outside. Well, if it is, you're going to miss it. She patted him on the back as he folded the paper to slip it to the pocket of his denim button shirt. You call me if you have any problems, but you're good to go. You're a strong man, Vince Caldwell. You really are. You are really lucky that letter opener didn't cause any brain damage. Thank you, doctor. Vince grabbed the duffel bag from me. Let's go, Bernie. Wow, you sure did get a hop in your step. It took me a couple of skips to get up to him. Well, I guess right now is better time as any, he muttered, picking up his feet for me to push him out to the truck. I opened the door, and before I got to him, he was up on his feet. What was all that him and hawing around about in there? I knew Vince was hiding something, or something was up his sleeve. Well, I've been doing a lot of thinking in there. He reached up, grabbed the handle on the inside of the truck, and hoisted him in. You know, there's not much to do in a place like that but think. Even when I was in the hospital laid up on the ventilator, those beeping machines going off every 5 minutes caused me to move my arm, and I would turn this way or the other. The nurses talking in the hall. They tell you to rest is best thing for your body, but that place don't let you rest at all. He stopped talking long enough for me to sit in the driver's seat and get my seatbelt on before he continued. You check that date. I'm not missing bingo. He really surprised me. On the rare occasion he even came to bingo, it was often only because I would beg him to help out Iris Peabody, my best friend. There was just something fishy about bingo being on his mind. Luckily, I didn't have to ask to find out because he told me. Do you honestly think I slipped and fell and landed on a letter opener when I didn't even own a letter opener? The dark circles under his eyes told me just how much his mind had been rolling since he'd been there and how little sleep he'd had. Have you ever seen me open any mail you deliver with the letter opener? I took a second to think about it, and using the ponytail holder around my wrist, I pulled back my long auburn hair so it was just out of my way while I got him situated back into his normal life. Well, no, I've never seen you rip things, and I've never seen you. I've only seen you rip things open or in half when you didn't want to open them. In fact, I don't ever remember seeing a letter opener in his condo at the facility center either. His brows lifted. Told ya. Vince took pride in his age and appearance. He was always up earlier than anyone else in the senior living facility, and he had already exercised, taken a shower, and gotten dressed before I even got there. This was early, since the facility was my first stop on deliveries. I'd never seen circles under Vince's eyes. Ever. I don't know. Did someone come in to visit and just so happened to leave a letter opener? I asked, pushing the truck key into the ignition, turning the engine over. Someone come to visit, all right. Vince's tone was far from quiver. I'd heard a few minutes ago. Someone came to kill me, and you and I are going to find out who. Chapter 1, Red Letter Sleigh.